Good morning and welcome to PA117 week 7. This week we are in chapter 4, which is the last pages of chapter 4. So on 51 going to the very end of the chapter. So we're going to lecture about that. I wanted to talk about your discussion question first. It is a scenario question. So it gives you a what if. What if this happened in your pharmacy, and then what would you do? I love these the best because they're an opinion based, and so I get to hear from you and get to really know you better on how you would handle certain situations. And so there are a couple questions that you'll need to answer if you want to just, again, some of you put 1, here's the answer, 2, here's the answer. Or you could just write it out in a paragraph, whatever is suitable for you. Make sure we're trying to include 250 words in this discussion, and then it makes it easier for people to peer review you that way. So make sure to include that. If you have any questions about it, let me know. I think it's a really good one. Something I wanted to talk about was that cigarettes were sold in pharmacies pretty recently, probably up into the 80s. And there are some in small towns that still do sell cigarettes. I know of a small town close to Columbia, Missouri, where I live, is Ashland, and they still smoke in their pharmacies. So it's not illegal, like the question says, but is it ethical? And I talked to a lot of my friends who live down in Ashland, and they are not happy that their medications come out smelling like smoke. They don't feel like it's a healthy environment. And so I don't know how you see your pharmacy. Is it a one-stop shop, or is it a way to, fix something that you're ill, and so you're fixing something? I don't know. I'd love to hear from you, and I'm glad this has come up. Okay, so your assignment is also 5 questions on DEA number and how to calculate those. I'm going to lecture on it, and then we can talk about more about that. But just a quick little housekeeping thing. It's 5 questions. So if you want to copy and paste it to a Word document and then answer it that way, or you can just do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and then put A, B, C, or D, whatever the answer is. Either one I'll take. Okay, so let's go to chapter 4. It starts on page 51, like I said, and basically we're talking about the Federal Controlled Substance Act of 1970, who's able to prescribe, requirements, restrictions, that type of stuff. So that's where I'm going to start. Who may prescribe? And practitioners are not licensed by the federal government. They are not licensed by the federal government. It is state to state who decides who can be licensed. There is a test that some have to take. There are certain things that a state requires for that prescriber or that physician to become licensed in that state. Who is allowed to prescribe medications, including controlled substances? Traditional prescribers are physicians, osteopaths, dentists, and veterinarians. In some instances, we have podiatrists, and practitioners must be licensed in the state where they practice, and they must also be registered with the DEA or be exempt from registration. Those traditional prescribers may prescribe any legal medication. And so when they talk about legal medication, they're talking about what would be in their scope of practice. And one of the questions that we had, it might have been in a different course, or it might have been here, that a doctor was prescribing Ambien. And that was a question about, was he out of his scope of practice to do that? And some may argue that he was, and some may argue that Ambien, they need the patient to sleep better, and maybe they won't grind their teeth that way. Either way, unethical, who knows? Well, it's just a great one to hear from. Okay, page 52, here's where I want to spend most of my time, the DEA number for prescribers, since most of your assignment and your quiz has to do with the DEA number. It says, after individuals have registered with the DEA, they are assigned unique DEA identification numbers, and this consists of 9 characters. Put that in your mind, 9. The first 2 are letters. The first letter is either A, B, M, or P. An A or B signifies a prescriber with full prescribing rights. The M signifies a mid-level prescriber with limited prescriptive rights, and P signifies a distributor. The second letter is the first letter of the registrant's last name. So if it is Dr. Miller, then it would be AM. it would be M for his last name, Miller. And then the characters to follow that are all numbers. And so to verify a DEA number, a simple formula is used. We add the first, third, and fifth digits, and then to that number we add twice the sum of the second, fourth, and sixth digit. So here's an example if you didn't follow just what I said. Jane Smith uses the number BS2473293. And is it a valid number? The B is appropriate for a physician, remember, because we said it would be A or B, and the S is the first letter of her last name, so that checks out. And then we're going to add the numbers together. So first, third, and fifth is the 2, 7, 2, which adds up to 11. And the second, fourth, and sixth are 4, 3, and 9. And then again, we're going to double it. So that's 4, 3, and 9 equals 16 times 2 is 32. Then we add those two sums together, which is 11 and 32, which comes up to 43. The last digit of that sum, which is 3, should match the ninth number, which it does in this, and so that is a valid DEA number. That checks out. So make sure you commit this paragraph to memory, and then on your assignment and on your quiz, go in and answer those, trying to use it without your book so that you can have some practice. Again, this calculation comes up in almost every certification test. It comes up in a couple of courses here in your pharmacy technician program. So it's really important that you just commit it to memory and that you can do it very quickly and easily. If you have questions about it, please let me know. Let's learn this right here so that later you don't have any problem with it. Okay, so I lectured about that. There are a couple paragraphs I do want to hit before we end lecture. Purpose of a prescription. Again, we're talking about the usual scope of practice. It's given an example of a podiatrist, which is a foot doctor, prescribing a medication for a toothache. That would not be normal scope, and how they deal with that. And then it talks about prescribing C2 products. Again, controlled substances come up in a lot of your testing. It says, in a case of emergency, it can be assumed that the prescriber has determined the treatment with the C2 controlled substance is necessary. The pharmacist can also assume the prescriber believes that no other alternative treatment is sufficient. That those two criteria are met, an oral prescription for emergency supply must be issued. And it's talking about taking an oral prescription. On receipt, the oral prescription must be immediately reduced to the writing. The amount prescribed and dispensed for an emergency prescription may only be enough to last the patient through the emergency up to 72 hours. This is the amount that must be recorded. Within 7 days, then they must have a handwritten copy of the prescription. So this is just only in emergency situations. It talks about prescribing C3s, C4s, and C5s, and then dispensing, labeling that type of stuff. Dispensing emergency contraceptive. This has been a issue in the past, or an ethical issue, and some pharmacists will not prescribe it or will not dispense it. So make sure you read that paragraph, how we mail controlled substances, how we report theft to the DEA, and then it goes into sample questions for your student review. These don't have to be answered because they're not on your assignment, but maybe read through them so that you know that you read your chapter and understand it. All right, well, that is the end of Chapter 4. I hope you guys have a great week. Let me know if you have any questions, and again, this is all about the DEA number this week, so make sure that you really hone in on that. Have a great week and talk with you soon.